Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of newspaper reading. Now we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 12th of April 2019, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And so now with this, let us start with the first article. Now we have taken this lead editorial from the editorial page on page 8. Now what this editorial talks about is of Brexit. Now what was supposed to happen was that Britain was originally going to leave the European Union on 29th of March 2019, and before this date, Britain and European Union was supposed to sign the Brexit deal. Now what happened was that Britain and European Union were not able to sign the deal before 29th of March 2019, and therefore the date was extended to 12th of April 2019. However, what happened again was that Britain and European Union were again not able to decide on the Brexit deal. And therefore what has happened recently is that Britain and European Union have decided that Britain is going to leave the European Union on 31st of October 2019. Now within that context, this editorial is basically a commentary on this recent development in international politics. Wherein in this editorial, the author talks about British politics and on how there is a blame game among the important leaders within the British government and by the British opposition on having no Brexit deal. Moreover, the author also says that nobody in British politics has a solution for a Brexit deal, while some politicians within Britain are also even calling for another Brexit vote in the hope that the British voters may now vote to stay in the European Union. However, you have to understand that British politics, which is the main focus of this editorial, is not a part of your UPSC Civil Services examination. And this is the reason as to why this editorial has also not been taken in DNH or Daily News headlines. However, there's some important aspects about Brexit that you need to understand with regards to your prelims examination within the section Current Events of International Importance. Now to understand in what aspect Brexit is important for your prelims examination, what we'll do is try to understand a previous year question that was asked in the prelims examination of 2018. Now what this question had asked, the term two-state solution is sometimes mentioned in the news in the context of affairs of, and the correct answer to this question would be B, Israel. Now by understanding why this question was asked in the prelims examination of 2018, you would understand as to what aspects of Brexit are important for your 2019 prelims examination. Now what had happened was that in 2017, the United States moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, whereby Tel Aviv is basically the de facto capital of Israel, in which the Indian embassy is also located, while Jerusalem is claimed as capital by both Israel and Palestine. Now this decision of the United States to move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem became a current event or a current issue of international importance, because it was decided by the international community and by the United Nations that any solution to Jerusalem would be decided by both Israel and Palestine, and it would be decided between Israel and Palestine based on the two-state solution. Whereby what would happen is that there would be a separate country called Israel and there would be a separate country called Palestine, and between both of them they would decide as to what should happen to the territory of Jerusalem. However, because of this US decision to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and thereby accepting Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and thereby a territory of Israel, it violated the two-state solution. Now, it was within this context that the two-state solution was asked in your prelims examination of 2018, whereby two-state solution became of international importance because of the current event of the United States moving its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And it is within that context that we have to understand various aspects of the international importance of the current event of Brexit. Now, it is not necessary that the current event in itself would be asked in your prelims examination, whereby what might happen is that the international importance of that current event might be asked. And therefore, what we're going to understand in today's section are the various important aspects of international importance that have come up due to the recent decision of Brexit. Now, the first current event within itself would be Britain leaving the European Union. And the main international importance of the British withdrawal from the European Union is that it is the first and only invocation of Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. Now in simple terms, the Lisbon Treaty was agreed upon in 2009, and it basically amended the Treaty of Rome and the Treaty of Maastricht. Now, in the simplest of terms, the Rome Treaty and the Maastricht Treaty led to the formation of the European Union. However, because of the current expansion of the European Union, it became necessary so as to ensure further smoothening of the functioning of the European Union. And it was within that context that the Lisbon Treaty was signed in 2009 so as to amend the Rome Treaty and the Maastricht Treaty so as to ensure smooth functioning of the European Union. Now, before the Lisbon Treaty was signed, there were three territories which left the European Union. First was French Algeria, second was Greenland, and third was a territory of France. Whereby Algeria was a colony of France, whereby Greenland is basically a territory of Denmark. And both of these regions decided to leave the European Union. However, after the Lisbon Treaty was signed, an Article 50 was inserted, which allowed for a European member country to leave the European Union. Britain became the first country in the world to use Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty to withdraw from the European Union. Now, this is what you needed to understand with regards to the current event of British withdrawal from the European Union. Now, the second current event is that Britain is leaving the customs union of the European Union. Now, what we mean by the European Union Customs Union is that every country within the European Union apply the same customs for any product that is coming from any country outside the European Union. So let's say if India is exporting a good to Italy, then both Italy and UK and every other country of the European Union Customs Union would be applying the same customs duties on the import of Indian products. However, with Britain leaving the European Union Customs Union, Britain then would have the luxury of imposing its own customs duties on import of products from other countries, including countries of the European Union. However, this has created a problem of international importance, whereby it would lead to a customs border between the country of Ireland and Britain. Now, if you take a look at this map, Britain only shares a land border with the country of Ireland. Now, since Britain and Ireland were both members of the customs union of the European Union, then any product from the country of Ireland that needed to be moved to Britain would not require to go through customs checks on the border between Britain and Ireland. And similarly, any product of Britain would not require to go through customs checks when moving to Ireland. However, now, because Britain is leaving the European Union Customs Union, it would lead to a customs border between Ireland and Britain. And this has created a problem with regards to the land border between the Northern Ireland Territory of Britain and the country of Ireland. And therefore, to ensure that there is no customs border between Britain and Ireland, an Irish backstop agreement is being negotiated between the government of Britain and the European Union officials. Now, this Irish backstop agreement is therefore required between the country of Ireland and between Britain so that no form of customs border is formed. However, the European officials, the country of Ireland, and mainly the politicians within Britain are not able to decide as to what form of a backstop agreement that they would require, so as to ensure that no form of customs checks are formed between Britain and Ireland. Now, the third main current event about Brexit that you need to know is that Britain is also leaving the common market of the European Union. Now, in simple terms, what the European Common Market does is that it allows the free movement of people, goods, services, and capital among the various members of the European Union. Now, a major contention among the people who voted for Brexit was of the continuous immigration that was coming into the United Kingdom from other European members. Now, one of the main demands of the people who voted for Brexit was that they leave the European Common Market, so that the immigrants that are coming from European countries would not steal the jobs of the local population, whereby they had no desire of the free movement of people from various European countries to Britain. However, this has created a problem of international importance between the country of Ireland and the region of Northern Ireland of Britain, whereby it violates the Good Friday Agreement that was signed between the government of Ireland, the government of Britain, and by the political parties of Northern Ireland. Now, this Good Friday Agreement was negotiated between the government of Britain, government of Ireland, and the political parties within Northern Ireland. However, this agreement was only signed between the government of Ireland and the government of Britain and became effective in the year 1999. Now, again, if you take a look at this map, as you already understand, there is a land border between the area of Northern Ireland of Britain and between the country of Ireland. Now, there was a conflict between the people of Northern Ireland and the people of Ireland. Now, the main reason of this conflict was that the people of Northern Ireland were basically Protestant Christians, while the people of the country of Ireland were basically Catholic Christians. And the unofficial names of this conflict was Troubles. Now, to solve this Northern Ireland conflict, the government of Britain and the government of Ireland signed the Good Friday Agreement, which became effective in 1999. And some of the principles of the Good Friday Agreement was that there would be a free travel area, easier movement of people and goods between Northern Ireland and Ireland, whereby even the people of Northern Ireland are able to take up the passport of the country of Ireland and therefore could have dual citizenship of both Britain and of Ireland if they wanted. However, the problem that has come up now is that the country of Ireland is still a member of the European Union, but Britain has decided to leave the European Common Market, and therefore it has caused concerns as to whether it would violate the principles of the Good Friday Agreement. Now, the fourth and the last aspect that you need to know is about the dispute settlement mechanism between the European Union and Britain. Now, currently, any dispute between the European countries or the European Union and between Britain is being solved by the European Court of Justice. However, it is yet to be seen as to what would be the dispute settlement mechanism between the European Union and Britain after Brexit. Whereby what can happen is that the European Union and Britain can negotiate for a separate mechanism so as to solve trade disputes between them, or they can utilize the dispute settlement mechanism of the World Trade Organization, or they can continue with the European Court of Justice. So now let's say for an example that if India and the European Union have a trade dispute, they go to the World Trade Organization. However, if the United Kingdom or any member of the European Union have a trade dispute, they go to the European Court of Justice. However, if there is no deal between the European Union and Britain as to what would be their dispute settlement mechanism, then the fallback option would be the World Trade Organization. Now, it is within this context that you need to understand two things. First, that the European Court of Justice currently solves any trade dispute between the United Kingdom and any member of the European Union. And the second aspect that you need to know is that if no Brexit deal is signed between the European Union and Britain, then it would be the World Trade Organization that would solve the trade disputes between European Union and Britain. Now, these are the four aspects that you need to know with regards to the current event of Brexit and the various aspects of international importance that it has raised. Now, apart from this, what you also need to know is that it is not required that you understand about the Lisbon Treaty, the Rome Treaty, the Maastricht Treaty, the Good Friday Agreement, or the European Court of Justice further in depth with regards to your prelims examination. Whereby what is required for you to remember with regards to Brexit for your prelims examination are just the basic purposes of the Lisbon Treaty, the Good Friday Agreement, the European Court of Justice, and what is the common market and the customs union of the European Union. And hopefully with the explanation given in this section, you would be able to answer any of these questions if they're asked in your prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now this is a small news snippet which has appeared on page 18. Now what this article talks about is that the private company called SpaceX has postponed the first commercial launch of its Falcon Heavy rocket. Now there are two aspects that you need to understand from this article. First, as to what is SpaceX, and secondly, what is the Falcon Heavy rocket. And you need to understand about both of them from the perspective of your prelims examination. Now information with regards to SpaceX and the Falcon rocket has already been covered in a previous Daily News Simplified video of 4th of April 2018. And what I'll do is provide you the link to this video which is given in the description section, through which you can try to understand the various aspects about SpaceX and the Falcon Heavy rocket with regards to your prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 7. Now what this article talks about is of solar e-waste. Now the problem which has been highlighted in this article is that India has a large portion of e-waste which is being generated from solar components. Now these solar components include solar wafers, solar panels and other aspects of solar components. And the main problem which has been highlighted in this article is that India's waste management rules of 2016 do not mandate either the guidelines or the rules for either recycling or disposing the solar e-waste. Now the manufacturing of solar components requires a lot of heavy metals. And therefore when solar components are not being used, this waste which is generated from solar components create a problem for the environment. Now roughly 80% of solar components are either made of glass or aluminium and are not hazardous or a problem to the environment. However, solar components use a lot of heavy metals which can be leaked into the environment once they are created as waste. Now these dangerous materials which can be leaked from solar components once they become a waste include chromium, silicon tetrachloride, cadmium, selenium and sulfur hexafluoride. Now, it is within this context that it becomes extremely important for the proper recycling or disposing of solar components. Now, it is within that context that the article has highlighted that by adding solar waste to the e-waste management rules of 2016 can ensure strong guidelines for the recycling and the disposing of waste from solar components. Now, adding of solar waste under the e-waste management rules of 2016 would strengthen its recycling and disposing of, because the e-waste management rules of 2016 strengthened the extended producer responsibility, whereby under this extended producer responsibility, it ensures the take back of end-of-life products. Now, let us understand this in an example. Now, one of the components which is included in e-waste management rules is of mobile phones. So now let's say you're a manufacturer of mobile phones within India. Now what you would need to do is that either individually or in cooperation with other mobile manufacturing companies, you would need to form a producer responsibility organization. And through this producer responsibility organization, you as the producer of mobile phones would need to collect the e-waste which has been generated once the mobile phones are disposed of by the consumers. Now let's say as a manufacturer of mobile phones, you have formed a producer responsibility organization with other manufacturers of mobile phones. Now what you would need to do is form an organization and finance this organization first to collect every mobile phone which has been disposed of by the consumers, and secondly to ensure that these mobile phones are properly being recycled and disposed of. Now this responsibility as a manufacturer of mobile phones which you have undertaken is known as extended producer responsibility, whereby you're not just responsible for manufacturing that mobile phone, you also become responsible for disposing and recycling that mobile phone. And this is one of the major achievements which has been added under the e-waste management rules of 2016. And what this article is trying to say is that manufacture of solar components should also be brought in under the e-waste management rules of 2016, so that they would also need to undertake extended producer responsibility. Whereby what is currently happening is that solar components manufacturers are only manufacturing solar components, but they're not undertaking any form of responsibility for recycling or disposing of solar components after they have been used by consumers. However, once if they have been added under the e-waste management rules, then solar component manufacturers, either individually or in a group, would need to form producer responsibility organization, and then they would also need to form another organization and finance that organization so that it can collect, recycle and dispose of solar components. And by doing this, the solar component manufacturers would be fulfilling their extended producer responsibility. Now this article falls in your UPSC syllabus within GS paper 3 within the section environment. Now apart from this, what are the dangerous material which are present in solar components, and similarly what is producer responsibility organization and what is extended producer responsibility, all three of them become relevant with regards to your prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this opinion based editorial from page 9. Now this editorial is basically an interview and is in a question answer format. Now what we're going to do is understand as to what the question has been asked, then analyze the answer that has been given from the perspective of your UPSC examination. Now the anti-satellite test or ASAT, which was undertaken by India, has already been explained multiple times in previous DNS video, and therefore we're not going to go into the background of the anti-satellite test and are only going to understand the various questions that have been asked and the answers that have been given. Now the first two questions that have been asked is whether the anti-satellite test which has been undertaken by India promote deterrence. Now the first thing that you need to understand is what is deterrence. Now in the simplest of terms, deterrence means the prevention of an attack from an enemy country. Now we're discouraging the enemy from attacking us by ensuring that it fears a retaliatory attack. Now it is within this context that the author is asking whether the anti-satellite test which India has undertaken, whether it promotes deterrence or not, whether it creates the fear within our enemy country so that they do not attack us. Now the answer which has been given in this article is that it remains doubtful as to whether ASAT would provide deterrence for India. Now the main reason given in this article as to why it remains doubtful as to whether ASAT would be able to provide deterrence for India is because of the fear of space debris. Now let's say if Pakistan attacks India and it has 5 military satellites within space, now would India be willing to shoot down each of these military satellites of Pakistan and create huge amount of debris in space? And similarly, even if India shoots down two of these military satellites, would India be willing to take the risk of the creation of space debris? Now, this is a problem which has also been highlighted by other countries which have the capability of anti satellite missiles, whereby even China, the United States, and other countries do not consider ASAT technology as a proper deterrence against enemy attacks, since there is a common fear among all the major powers of the creation of space debris. Now, within that regard, the author has also highlighted a solution. Now, the solution which has been highlighted by the author is disabling of enemy satellites through the use of lasers. Now, what this would do is that it would ensure that the military satellites of enemy countries are not properly functioning, and secondly, it would also ensure that space debris are also not created. And therefore, disabling satellite through the use of lasers would provide better deterrence as compared to anti-satellite missiles. Now, this is the answer which has been given with regards to question number 1 and 2. And now let us move on to question number 3. Now, the third question that has been asked is whether China is ahead of us with regards to anti-satellite capability. Now, the answer which has been given by the author is that China is far ahead of India in the development of anti-satellite missiles, and moreover, China currently has the capability of using lasers to shoot down satellites. Now, this is the only aspect which has been highlighted in question number 3. Now, after this, question number 4, question number 5, and question number 6 all talk about the same aspect, which is the weaponization or the militarization of space. Now, there's one difference that you need to understand with regards to militarization of space and the weaponization of space. Now, according to the authors, the militarization of space already exists. Now, the use of anti-satellite missiles, military satellites, the use of outer space for the transit of weapons have already led to the militarization of space. However, the difference which has been highlighted is that space has currently not been weaponized. Now, currently no major power has kept weapons within space. Now, one of the aspects which have been highlighted with this article is with regards to safeguarding space against weaponization. Now, already the Outer Space Treaty that was signed in 1967 currently prohibits other countries from placing weapons within outer space. Moreover, the authors have also highlighted that India and other countries should use the Conference on Disarmament to ensure a global treaty against weaponization of space. However, any future action that may be taken by countries is speculative in nature. And largely with regards to these three questions, what you need to understand is the difference between militarization of space and weaponization of space. And secondly, India is already indulging in militarization of space, but India has yet not indulged in the weaponization of space. Now you should see this editorial and the explanation given in this section, first from the perspective of GS Paper 2 within the section International Relations, and secondly from the perspective of GS Paper 3 within the section Security. And hopefully you have understood the various questions that have been asked in this editorial and the explanation of the answers that have been given for those questions. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now there are two different editorials which have appeared in today's Hindu newspaper with regards to the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Now the first editorial has appeared on page 8 while the second editorial has appeared on page 9. Now Mangal sir has already covered in depth as to what is required to be understood about the Jallianwala Bagh from the perspective of your UPSC examination in the Daily News Simplified of 7th of April. Now what we're going to do today is undertake various questions for practice with regards to the Jallianwala Bagh and again revise it from the perspective of your prelims examination. Now there are two questions for your practice, and what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now the correct answer to question number 1 is C, both 1 and 2, whereby the Disorders Inquiry Committee was formed to inquire into the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, whereby this Disorders Inquiry Committee is popularly known as the Hunter Committee. While with regards to statement number 2, the Jallianwala Bagh protest was preceded by the protest against the Anarchical and the Revolutionary Crimes Act of 1919, whereby the popular name for this act is the Rowlatt Act. Now with regards to question number 2, the correct answer is B, 2 and 3, whereby Rabindranath Tagore renounced his knighthood which was given by the British Crown, and similarly Mahatma Gandhi returned his Kaiser-e-Hind medal which was awarded by the British government for his work during the Boer War. And so now with this, let us move on to the next section. Now there are 3 more questions for your practice, and as you already understand, what you need to do is pause this video, solve all of these 3 questions and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now with regards to question number 3, the correct answer is C, both 1 and 2, whereby cadmium and chromium are both hazardous waste which is found in solar components. Now with regards to question number 4, the Belfast Agreement is also known as the Good Friday Agreement, and as you already understand, it is associated with the country of Ireland, and therefore the correct answer to this question is C. While with regards to question number 5, the EU Common Market does ensure free movement of EU citizens and a single market for goods, and therefore the correct answer to question number 5 is C, both 1 and 2. And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.